What's going on? Thank you for listening to a late night edition of the MMA Podcast. As always, we got a lot to break down. This past weekend, UFC on Fight Pass, Adelaide, Australia, Mark Hunt versus Stipe Miocic. Well, a lot of folks thought we'd see a very close fight, but ended up being a one-sided beatdown. Stipe won a fight that probably should have been stopped in the second round. Instead, it goes all 5 rounds. Mark Hunt taking one of the worst beatings in UFC history. We also have a fight going down in the Philippines this coming weekend between Frankie Edgar and Uriah Faber. We didn't do a show last week, so we'll briefly touch on that Floyd versus Manny fight. And we had Glory 21 this past weekend. We were on press row. We'll talk about that a little bit. Let's do it, people.
You're listening to the MMA Podcast.
That's right, the MMA Podcast 128. It'll most definitely be shorter than the last one. This will actually probably be one of our shorter shows. It was going to be myself and the Jew, Ross Finkelstein, but he flaked out, passed out. I don't know where he is, so this is actually going to be one of those rare solo shows. Plus, last week's marathon show, I think it was the longest show we've ever done. It went almost 3 hours or over 3 hours. We had Dada 5000 on and played that interview. Talked a lot. Myself and Davey Boy talked about John Jones getting his title stripped, which probably the biggest news of the sports scene all the year. John Jones, if you haven't heard, getting in that hit and run, getting his title stripped, suspended indefinitely, probably won't be back until sometime next year. So now we have Daniel Cormier versus Anthony Johnson at UFC 187 for the light heavyweight belt, which we'll break down on next week's show. But let's talk about what we have in front of us, and let's start. Our friend Patrick was representing the show on Press Row, tweeting from our Twitter account. Was actually during the prelims. I think one of the only people live tweeting the results. So big shout out to Patrick, who, if you don't follow him yet on Twitter, go ahead and give him a follow at Sweet Pappy Jones. We haven't had him on in forever. Probably not since the last roundtable, but yeah, we'll try and get him on again. And let's actually talk about Glory 21, the event he was at in San Diego, featuring a middleweight championship fight and a heavyweight contender tournament. Let's talk about the tourney first, where, man, Xavier Vigny faced Shai Lewis Perry in the finals, and it was a fun-ass fight. It was everything that the disappointing Mayweather-Pacquiao fight wasn't. Both of these guys threw. Maybe, I don't know, the winner of this will probably end up fighting Rico Verhoeven, and I just can't see Xavier Vigny. The dude throws with reckless abandon, but the technique, I don't know if he has what it takes to beat a calculated striker like Rico Verhoeven. In the middleweight championship, which a lot of fans have been talking about, most people watching at home scored it 4-1 to Marcus, who, if you include the point that Levin got deducted from him in the third round, that would lead you to believe the fight would be 49-45 Marcus. That's how I scored it. But instead, it ends up being a majority draw. Marcus takes one of the judges' scorecards, 48-46. So 3-2, I guess. It was really interesting because 2 of the judges scored at 47-47, and everyone thought it was a travesty. Patrick, who was on Press Row, actually scored at 47-47 too, and I don't know if the announcing sort of made a lot of fans watching at home a little biased toward Marcus. I don't know whether the crowd noise leaned folks more toward Levin, who's lived in San Diego now for 2 years, I think. Nonetheless, really close fight. Man, I would love to see Joe Schilling fight Levin or Marcus, because both of these guys, Marcus sort of let Levin fight the fight that he wanted to be in, which was maybe his only downfall. Levin just, the guy is an incredibly skilled boxer. I don't know why he was tying up over and over and over again, but he did, and obviously it was enough to earn a draw. He doesn't lose the belt, keeps it with a draw. I would assume we see a rematch. The only thing maybe keeping Glory from doing it is the fact that the fight was a little boring because Levin was trying to tie up so much. But, most fights where you have a guy pretty handily win in most fans' eyes and it goes to a draw, if the guy doesn't get the belt, I think we'll probably see a rematch here. We'll go back in time another week because we didn't do a show last week, and I want to just really, really briefly touch on the Floyd versus Manny fight, the boxing fight, which the pay-per-view number is official at $4.4 million. That's $440 million in pay-per-view revenue. Floyd made over $250 million. And what I kept seeing over and over and over is, oh, this fight sucked. It wasn't worth my money. If you spent $100 on that fight, you should have known what was going to happen. Everyone who knows boxing knew exactly what was going to happen, and that was Floyd was just going to defense Manny. Every time Manny came with a flurry, except maybe twice, Floyd just wasn't there. Stayed on the outside, landed more shots, and won a very easy decision. That fight has been broken down to death, so I'm not going to beat the horse anymore. It's funny that we're honestly probably going to go from doing our longest show last week, 3 hours, to, man, I don't even know if this one goes a full half hour. I've sort of got things in front of me, and usually what stretches out a show is, going back and forth and debating stuff and relaying ideas, but it's just me doing it solo. If you are listening live and want to call in or tweet in, the Twitter is at the MMA Podcast. The phone number is 213-457-3380, or you can Skype us at the MMA Podcast. Talk about whatever you want. I know it's late night, so we might not get as many live views as we usually do. But next week, I don't know if we're going to do a live show. I will for sure be in Vegas. I don't know if we'll bring the mic. I don't know if we'll do the podcast on the road driving there. It'll be myself and the Westland Eagle, who actually had his first amateur MMA fight this past Saturday and won via unanimous decision. So hats off to Alan for winning a fight. And we'll be in Vegas. What is it now? It's Wednesday. Oh, no, it's Friday. Jesus. A week from today, we'll be in Vegas for UFC 187 weekend. We got Cormier Rumble. We got Weidman Belfort. It's going to be fun. Let's talk about that UFC card last weekend, May 9th in Adelaide, Australia. Adelaide, I don't know how to pronounce it there, but man, we saw some brutal finishes. The whole card really was fun, top to bottom. We had Beck Rawlings with a fun RNC in the first round. Sam Alvey, who, I don't know if it was in protest of the Reebok deal, which we'll talk about that, which absolutely insane how low fighters are getting paid off of it. But Sam Alvey comes in with a sponsor, Perfect Tan, tanned onto his chest. The UFC was not happy with it at all, said they tried to get it off Sam to no avail before the fight. Sam winning, I think he didn't get a $50,000 bonus, and honestly, that's probably because of the tan sponsor. He did win, I think, the second quickest finish of the night, second to Robert Whitaker in the co-main. But yeah, Sam Alvey knocks out Dan Kelly 50 seconds in, calls out Elias Thurido. Kyle Noak wins via split decision. Bin Nguyen wins via TKO with 1 second left in the first round. Alex Chambers defeats Kaylin Curran in a some of these women's strawweight fights are just, I'm sorry, and I really hope we see women's MMA evolve a little bit more, but just the lack, I don't want to say lack of talent, because that comes off being a little misogynistic, but I don't know, man. We see a lot of men's heavyweight fights get very sloppy when these guys both run out of gas. I don't know if these girls ran out of gas, if it's just that this division is very shallow because not many 115-pound women fight. I don't know what it is, but this just lacked a lot of skill and technique. And I'll go ahead and move past it. Going to the main card, James Vick with a first-round sub over Jake Matthews. Sean O'Connell with a first-round TKO over the homeboy Anthony Perosh. Robert Whitaker, who was one of the few Aussies to really have a good night. We had Andrews losing, Matthews losing, Perosh losing, Hunt losing, but Robert Whitaker stole the show with, God, that was a brutal KO over Brad Tavares with our 44 seconds in, winning a $50,000 bonus, along with James Vick, Dan Hooker, and Alex Chambers, all winning performance of the night. There wasn't a fight of the night awarded, which was a little weird. But the main event, Stipe Miocic versus Mark Hunt, it was very brutal. I think the final strike count was like 400-80. Stipe at multiple times just had Hunt on the ground, in the mount, inside control something. It was just landing uncontested shot after uncontested shot. The ref had plenty of times to stop it. I don't know whether the ref didn't stop it because he was a Hunt fan, because he knew Hunt was at home. The corner should have thrown in the towel. The ref should have stopped it. It got really ugly. Just look up Mark Hunt before and after Miocic, and he looked like Jabba the Hutt when the fight was over. It's just his entire face inflamed, swollen up, his eyes almost swollen shut. He could barely see. Kind of sad to watch, honestly. I mean, Hunt is a legend. He'll always be a legend. He's known for having an iron chin, and maybe that iron chin came to his detriment in this fight, because he just took so much damage before the ref finally ended it halfway through the final round. Stipe now, everyone's saying he should get a fight, but let's not forget he just lost to Junior Dos Santos. So do we let Stipe leapfrog a guy who he lost to in the fight before Hunt? A lot of folks think Stipe won that fight, but on the record, that's a loss. So before Stipe gets a title shot, he either needs to fight Junior again, who I believe Junior is slated to fight Andrei Arlovsky later this month. I have Google, so there's no reason not to check it. I guess he has no fight scheduled now. He hasn't fought since. Who am I thinking of that Andrei Arlovsky is about to fight? Andrei Arlovsky is fighting Travis Brown soon. That's who I'm thinking of. And actually, 1 week at UFC 187. So I think your three top guys after we go through the title fight of Kane versus Verdum, a fight I feel like we've been waiting on for years. JDS, then Stipe, then the winner of Brown versus Andrei Arlovsky. I guess we'll move on. The heavyweight title picture, I would love to talk about more, but it's just been so stalled out. I mean, Kane's title run has been mediocre at best, and I don't know if it's his fault. I think a lot of it is the UFC's fault. I mean, since taking Brock Lesnar's belt at UFC 121 back October 2010, we're talking almost 5 fucking years ago. Kane has had the belt since. Or wait, no. He dropped it to Junior, sorry. But he drops it to Junior, gets it back a year later. So, losing it a year over a 5-year span, it feels like he's had it the whole time. And the UFC, the last 5 years, has given him Junior Dos Santos, which he lost the KO. Bigfoot, who he beat. Junior, who he beat. Bigfoot, who he beat. Junior, who he beat. He's only fought 2 different guys in the last 5 years. He's in the prime of his career. And, this is ages 27 to 32, a 5-year span. And you only give him 2 different challengers. All of the fights, I guess, made sense ranking-wise. But at the same time, just very odd matchmaking. How this is going to be the first time that Kane hasn't fought a guy named Junior or Bigfoot since 2010 when he beat Brock Lesnar. And I think Fabricio is really going to offer him some interesting challenges. Kane's biggest strength is getting on top and mollywopping you. And I don't know if Verdum is really a guy you want to just hop in the top position with, because we've seen many a fight where he locks a guy up from the bottom there. I guess we'll move on. We broke down all of the events I wanted to break down. Glory 21, Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao, and UFC Australia. So let's do it, people. Let's get to the news. Not a crazy amount of news items. The first one, which came up today, Tough Brazil 4, the finale. It's going to be between Lyoto Machida and Yoel Romero. This is going to be a very, very fun fight. You have Lyoto, who, man, I think this was the 8th loss of Lyoto's career. He's had a hell of a fucking run, and every time he lost, I feel like he got edged out, but he never got his ass kicked like Luke Rockhold kicked his ass, and it'll be very interesting to see him pitted up against the guy who, since he's joined the UFC back two years ago, has not lost, beat Clifford Starks, Honey Marks, Derek Brunson, Brad Tavares, and just killed Tim Kennedy at UFC 178 in the third round via TKO, the infamous Stoolgate fight. He is a guy too who really could have furthered his stock with a win against Jacare. He backs out because he tore a ligament and meniscus in his knee, and that was the fight where Chris Camozzi subbed in for him, and Jacare finished him quick. So Yoel, I don't know. I guess you have now Luke Rockhold next in line after the Weidman Belfort fight. After that, I would say Jacare's got to be next, and after that, I guess you put the winner of Lyoto and Yoelen. Weidman's now had 3 title fights, and Lyoto really gave him his biggest run or the biggest run for his money in any of those fights, and I have a feeling that it'll probably be closer than the Belfort fight too. So, I wouldn't be against down the line seeing a fight with Lyoto and Weidman again, but after that fucking embarrassing loss to Luke Rockhold, Lyoto has a lot of ground to cover. Pardon me, I would assume Lyoto will probably be a big favorite here. His takedown defense has always been pretty good. And as far as striking, Luke Rockhold matched up against him very well. I don't know if it's as good of a matchup for Yoel. So I think Lyoto's able to sort of get back in the groove of keeping his distance and trying to counter what Yoel throws at him. He's much more of a plodding striker who will try and throw these power punches as compared to a guy like Rockhold, who really has the speed to keep up with Lyoto. What else do we have here on news? Anthony Pettis injures his elbow. A lot of folks speculated that it was his eye that was messed up, but it actually was his elbow, not the orbital he injured at UFC 185 against Rafael dos Anjos. Pettis was supposed to fight Miles Jury on that UFC on Fox card in Chicago on July 25th. Instead, the former champ, if I had to match one guy up in the entire UFC with just being injury prone, it's probably Pettis, man. He's had these long stretches where he doesn't fight because he's just out with injury so much. He got the belt at UFC 164. It took him almost a year and a half between winning it and getting his first defense. It was August 2013 between the Benson fight and the Gilbert fight. That was December 2014. You had a nearly year-long break between the Lauzon and Cerrone fights, and now it's looking like I don't know. I hope we see Pettis later this year because he's one of the sport's best fighters. I think that fight to Dos Anjos at UFC 185 would have been much closer if Pettis didn't break his orbital in the first round. That is one of those injuries that cripples you. It is very, very difficult to fight with a broken orbital. So Pettis trying to get back in the win column against Miles Jury, a fight I think most people expected him to win. Instead, it'll be Jury versus Barboza. UFC on Fox 16, July 25th. Pettis will be out, I think, 4 to 6 months, which puts him, maybe you put him on the end of the year card. I don't know. The UFC seemed to like putting him on those Fox cards until he actually won the belt. So I'm not sure whether his next fight will be on a pay-per-view or a Fox card. But man, just tough news to hear from Pettis. More tough news. I don't really have much specifics on this, so I won't dwell on it too much. But apparently, former UFC fighter Corey Hill. Details are really sparse. There were false reports that he passed away. Apparently, he's fighting for his life with some medical condition. I don't know, honestly, at all what it is. And I think most folks who do are kind of keeping it mum in respect to Corey Hill's family. But apparently, Corey Hill fighting for his life. So send some positive thoughts to his family and all that. Man, it was a rough week or two for MMA, for the UFC, and probably, aside from just the Corey Hill story for being terrible and the John Jones story, just because it was, I don't know, it's really sad to see a guy with so much talent in the prime of his life seemingly throwing it away. We have this UFC Reebok deal, and the terms of it come out, and the terms of it absolutely infuriate fighters. Basically, we hear the UFC and Reebok ink this landmark, monumental deal. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great for all the fighters. And then we hear a little bit more about, well, it's an exclusive deal, so fighters can't market their own sponsors, which is a big thing. Fighters make a lot of money off of sponsorships, whether it's, the local Ford place, whether it's a national brand, whether, Zions, Dynamic Fastener. There are so many brands that pay fighters, and the UFC and Reebok deal seemed to be a little sketchy at first because you were taking all that money away from the fighters, and the UFC goes, no. We are going to give guys their due for repping this, this Reebok gear, and we're going to pay them a lot. And the numbers finally came out last week. And the numbers are embarrassing. It goes from it basically goes by bouts you have in the UFC. 1 to 5 bouts, you only make $2,500. 6 to 10, $5,000. 11 to 15, 10. 16 to 20, you make $15K. If you have 21 bouts and over, which we're talking a very, very few. Handful of UFC guys, you're still only making $20,000, challenging for the belt 30 and champion 40. From bottom to top, these are terribly low, and we had a lot of fighters speak out. You had Matt Mitrione saying, "Congrats, Reebok, you got the deal of the century. Unfortunately, it was at the cost of the fighters. Hope the bad press is worth it at UFC." Brendan Schaub from The Fighter and the Kids saying, "I've made 6 figures in sponsorship in each of my last 6 fights. And now, instead of making 6 figures, he'll make either 5 or 10,000. Kennedy saying, "Dear UFC, am I to understand that for my exclusive apparel sponsorship, I'll make $2,500? I'll pass. Thanks for the generous offer." And then he tweets at Bellator, "Hey, I have a ton of these. I'll just read two more, both of these by Al Iaquina. Al saying, 'Hey Floyd, here's $40K, and no, you can't have Burger King walk out with you. Here, wear these generic shorts all week. Don't like them, too bad. LeBron, unless you have 20 seasons, you're still at second tier in sponsors, bro.'" And there is literally, from the fighters who are just entering the UFC all the way up to champions, I don't see how this benefits any fighter, period. I've heard the UFC has backtracked a bit, said that they might up it some. What it sounds like to me is one of two things. Either, and both of them aren't good for the UFC, don't reflect well on them. It's either one, Reebok bilked the shit out of the UFC, talked him into a horrible deal, and the UFC isn't making near as much money as they should from it. And you can't really blame Reebok. I've seen a lot of fans tweet at them and be like, "Oh, you're screwing the fighters over." It's not Reebok's responsibility to look out for the fighters. It's the UFC's, and this is exactly why I think we need a fighter union. Either A, Reebok just bilked the UFC and are paying them way less than the deal is actually worth, and the UFC is spreading out the money they're getting. It's that, or the UFC is just being really greedy. They're taking all the money from the deal and putting it in their pockets. Unfortunately, neither one would surprise me. Dana White, yeah, I think he cares about the sport. I think he cares about the fighters. But the guy's also going out spending $50,000 a night at blackjack tables when fighters on the prelims are only making 8 and 8, which is pathetic. Give them at least, 15 and 15. Give them a living wage. You have fighters who say they fight twice a year, in the UFC, and go 1-1. That's $24,000. Honestly, all right. Say he fights 3 times and is a good fighter, goes 2-1, makes $16K, and 8K. That's still only $40,000. You think about all the fees with training, all the fees with supplements, all the fees with traveling, all the fees with a gym, all the fees associated with being a UFC fighter, taxes. We can see active fighters who fight 3 times a year and are good, win 2 of those 3 fights, and they're only walking away with less than $20,000. Fighters who have families, that's not enough to put food on the table, pay bills. I think 15 and 15 would be a lot fairer. Pay them $15,000 a show, $15,000 if they win. 8 and 8. Just, I hate to talk shit about the UFC because I love watching their fights, and I think for the most part they have good intentions, but fighter pay is just the one thing that I don't think any fan can really argue that the UFC is paying these guys fairly. Is it their responsibility to pay them fairly? No, this is the USA. It's a capitalist, setup, and no, the UFC is not held with the duty of paying fighters fairly. But I think it just screams why you need a fighter union. The same reason we see a players union, in hockey, basketball, baseball, football, you name it. The athletes have a union to look out for their best interests. And right now we can see that the UFC isn't exactly doing that. So I've got a feeling that this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. That coming from this, man, I would not be shocked at all if 2015 we see a fighters union. Even Coker is saying the Bellator phone has been ringing because UFC fighters are really, really mad about this deal with Reebok, and they're realizing, wow, the UFC is the big show, but I can go over to Bellator, sponsor, be sponsored by all of the local sponsors, all of the folks who used to sponsor me, and I'll make more money fighting for Bellator because of this shitty deal. And I'm a UFC fan. I want to see the best fighters in one place, so all of those belts are the top belts. Will that be the UFC moving forward? We used to sort of have these dual, I guess you would call it a bipolar system where you have these 2 superpowers in the UFC and Pride. I don't know if Strikeforce necessarily got that big, but UFC and Pride, when you had 2 different organizations, and you would always say who is the best, the Pride champ or the UFC champ. The UFC's got to get their act straight, or we might be headed back toward a system where you have 2 top dogs, not just one, like the UFC's had it since they bought out Pride. I believe that's all we have for news. If you are listening live and have anything else you want me to break down, just tweet me at the MMA Podcast or give us a ring. The phone number again is 213-457-3380. And I guess we'll wrap it up with UFC Manila. Yeah, we're barely over the 30-minute mark. This is going to be a short show. And we do apologize for that marathon 3-hour show last week. We spoke with Dada 5000, one of the funnest interviews I've ever done. That dude knows how to sell himself, knows how to sell his product, and I'm very, very. I'll have a close eye on BYB Extreme. Go and visit bybextreme.com. Visit cocainecowboys.com to watch the documentary Dogfight, which Dada is the main role in. It follows those backyard fights in Miami. Just really, really great stuff by Billy Corbin. Let's break this UFC Fight Night Manila card down, and then let's get the fuck out of here, people. It's going to be a very strange start time. I'm pretty sure of it, but let me bring it up just to make sure. It's going to be whichever way you want to look at it, late night Friday, or we may as well just call it Saturday morning, because the prelims begin at 4 a.m. Pacific, 7 a.m. Eastern. The main card kicks up 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. I'm for sure going to DVR this and catch it when I wake up, because I don't see how a fight card that goes, I'm in Mountain Time, so, saying the main card goes 2 hours, that'll be 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. Mountain Time Saturday morning for me, and I don't know, usually I'm sleeping in those hours. That would kind of mess up my schedule there. So looking at the fight card now, the first 2 fights will be on UFC Fight Pass. 2 flyweight fights, and I'm not even going to bore you with the names or try and break them down because I haven't heard of any of these dudes. The prelims on Fox Sports 1, a bantamweight fight between Ning Guangyu and Hoisin Wei, a welterweight fight, which I'm actually, this and Tai Hyun Bang against John Tuck are probably going to be the 2 fights I'll have my eyes on during the prelims. Diego Lima was a big prospect coming out of MFC and XFC. His brother, the Bellator champion Douglas Lima, came in, lost his first fight, the TUF 19 middleweight final to Eddie Gordon, KO first round. Got back in the win column, but then lost to Tim Means. I think he wins this one. The line currently is actually -170 for Lima. He's fighting the Chinese fighter Li Jingliang, who sort of like Lima lost his last fight after beating David Machado at UFC 173. Both of his last 2 fights were split decisions. Jing Liang, known for that suffocating grappling style. I think Lima's skilled enough to keep Jing Liang off him, keep it a striking fight, and if he does make it a stand-up striking fight, I think it's Lima's fight to lose there. You got Zhang Liping against Cajun Johnson, and like I mentioned, Tai Hyun Bang against John Tuck. Tuck a slight favorite, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see an upset. Mark Adiva, a very interesting story. He, a really young guy, fought Jumabek Turshin, the wolf, the wild wolf, or something as a student. Was training part-time, studying part-time, has his first UFC fight and wins. His second fight was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where he lost to Kevin Souza via second round TKO, looking to get back in the win column. I think Adiva is, he is a pretty sizable underdog to Levon Makashvili. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Makashvili. Adiva plus 325, so a pretty big dog there. But I believe he was an even bigger dog against Turshin, so we'll see if he pulls out another win. You have Philippe Nover versus Yui Chul Nam, the South Korean. I think his nickname's like the Korean Bulldozer or something. Nam, a very, very impressive record, winning his last 4 fights in Road FC before coming to the UFC and winning his debut, a split decision win against the Japanese Kazuki Tokudome. So he has 5 in a row going up against Nover, who has 3 in a row. Beat Daryl Horcher at Bellator and had his last 2 fights in Ring of Combat before coming into the UFC. This is his second stint in the UFC. His first stint didn't go so well. He lost to Efrain Escudero, Kyle Bradley, and Rob Emerson back in 2008 to 2010. He had those 3 fights, went 0-3 was cut. This is his second chance, but he will be an underdog to the Bulldozer, who's minus 175, going up against Nover, who I think Nover trains at Henzo Gracie with our buddy Yao the Truth, who shout out to him. I think he was down in, forget what city, if it was Coconut Creek or what, but down in South Florida for the ADCC North American Trials, which just to be a part of that, I mean, you're one of the best grapplers in North America. So big ups for just being a part of that at his really young age. I think he's either 19 or 20. He was going to be rolling to Vegas with Alan and myself, but couldn't make it, got held up with work. First round fought a black belt who, I don't know, I've heard of him a few times, pretty well known, AJ Agazarm, who Yao dominated most of the fight before getting subbed with a toe hold very, very late in it, showing it that Yao, a blue belt, can hang with the best grapplers in the world. The kid's future is so bright it almost hurts your eyes. Let's keep it rolling though. We have a welterweight match between Hyun-Gyu Lim and Neil Magny. This is for sure the most underrated fight on the card. This is going to be a really fun fight, and I don't think people really are appreciating the magnitude of it in the welterweight weight class. You have Neil Magny, who's on a 6-fight win streak, which you don't see 6-fight win streaks very often in the UFC. Extending it to 7 would give him one of the longest streaks for someone who was not a champion. Once he hits 7, you're hitting the area where it's like, this guy is 1 fight or 2 fights away from getting a title shot, and Lim is easily the toughest guy of his last 6 fights, where he beat Gaston Umalatov, Tim Means, Rodrigo de Lima, Alex Garcia, William Macario, and Kichi Kunimoto. Hyun-Gyu Lim, one of the brightest stars we've seen come from South Korea, fighting with KTT. The ace, I think, was 12-3 going into his fight against Tarek Saffiedine, which Saffiedine is one of these guys who's just a brilliant game planner. He might not be better than you, but he can cook up a strategy on how to beat you, and that's exactly what Tarek did. Tarek won I guess you could call it close. The rounds Tarek won, he dominated Lim, but I mean, when you look at the scorecard, Lim won rounds 1 and 5, so it was a 48-47 fight unless you scored that 4th round 10-8 toward Tarek Saffiedine. It was the fight of the night, and Lim probably grew a ton from that fight. Came back, won his next fight via TKO last September at that UFC Japan card against Takanori Sato, and he's going up against Magny. Both of these, I think they have got to be probably 2 of the biggest, if not the 2 biggest welterweights in the UFC. Magny, 6'3", a reach of 78 inches. Lim, 6'2", a reach of 79 inches. That's like middleweight size. And both of these guys are fighting at 170. Pretty lanky guys. Lim probably has the power. Magny, I would assume, would probably have the edge as far as groundwork. Probably a little bit better takedown offense. If it's standing up, man, I would give a slight edge to Lim, because Lim has just shown that standing up boxing with guys, he has just a knack for not just putting hands on you in the right place, but landing that knee. His first 2 fights in the UFC against Marcelo Guimarães and Pascal Kraus, he started the combo. He finished the fight with a knee, and being as big as he is, it's very difficult to dodge those big knees coming from the South Korean. Magny is a slight favorite, minus 130 to Lim's plus 110. I guess I'm picking Magny, and I was sort of teasing our buddy Alan because he's a huge fan of Lim, and I was saying Magny would win easy. I don't think it'll be an easy win. It'll be a tough win for whoever gets the victory, but I have Magny winning this one. Maybe it goes unanimous decision. I don't know. Both of these guys are explosive, so I guess chances are we see a finish. And I'm looking now; they actually have it about 50-50 whether the fight goes to a decision in Vegas. So keep an eye on that one. It'll be pretty fun. We got 2 middleweight fights before the main event of Edgar Faber. We have Mousasi versus Costa Philippou and Munoz versus Luke Barnett. This is a fight where Luke, I think anyone who knows both fighters well and doesn't have bias would say that Luke's probably the better fighter, but all the X factors here are going in the column of Mark Munoz. You have the fact that he is Filipino. The fight is going to be in the Philippines. You have the fact that this is going to be Mark Munoz's last fight. Whether he wins or loses, he's announced that when this fight's over, he's going to help train his kid, help coach, and he won't be fighting any longer. So, we've seen sort of, I guess, a mixed bag from fighters saying it's their last fight. We've seen a lot of very inspired fights. I think Chris Lytle went out with a really nice fight before he hung his gloves up. We've also seen a lot of uninspired fights. So I'm not sure what goes down here. Both of them, I guess Munoz really doesn't need a win if he's not going to be fighting anymore. But Mark has lost 4 of his last 5, lost to Chris Weidman, then beat Tim Boetsch before losing 3 in a row to Lyoto Machida and Gegard, who you can get those losses, but then loses to the much lesser known Juan Carnero at UFC 184 just a few months ago via first round rear naked choke, got choked to sleep. Luke losing his last 2 fights via very, very close split decisions to Sean Strickland and Roger Navarez. I guess I'll go with Luke here. This is another fight like Lim Magny that whoever wins isn't going to shock me because either guy could win at any second. But if I've got to pick one, I guess I'm going Luke here just because he's got a lot more tools on his tool belt. He's much bigger. Talk about being big for your weight class. Luke's a middleweight and he's 6'6", has an 82-inch reach. I mean, that's big for a heavyweight. So I don't know if Mark is a D1, I think, wrestler, so he probably could grapple the shit out of Luke if he can get inside and get those takedowns. But if not, I don't know. Let's move to the co-main and the main event. Then we'll get the hell out of here. Gegard Mousasi against Costa Philippou. This is probably the most one-sided fight on the entire card. This is Gegard's fight to lose for sure. I don't know if there's any category I give Costa the advantage in. Costa, he's been given a lot of tests. He lost to Francis Carmont, lost to Luke Rockhold, actually had an impressive win against Lorenz Larkin about a year ago, but that was his last fight, I think, a year and five days ago. Gegard, the guy rarely loses. When he does, it's to top-notch talent like Lyoto or Jacare. You look at his last fight, he embarrassed Dan Henderson via first round TKO this past January in Stockholm, Sweden. I think Philippou is a step down from Dan as far as talent goes. Gegard's minus 650, which in Vegas is a pretty big line. You have to bet $650 to make 100, which I don't like those odds really. I think Costa probably has more a chance than that, but at the same time, I wouldn't bet on it because this is going to be a very one-sided fight. I think it's going to be all Gegard, and I think he finishes it within a round and a half. Final fight, Frankie Edgar versus Uriah Faber. This is a fight that I think is closer to than Vegas is letting on. They have Frankie minus 450, and I do think Frankie should have the leg up here. He's fighting a guy who I guess isn't that much smaller. You know, you think of Frankie as a guy who spent a lot of time at 55. We've never seen Faber at 55. He's been at 35 or 45, but Faber also cuts a lot more than Frankie does. Faber's 5'6" with a 67-inch reach. Frankie 5'6" with a 68-inch reach. I guess a little more there. Wrestling, I give it to Faber. Striking, this is where Faber's really got to make his power count. I think he's a more powerful striker than Frankie, but Frankie currently is on this run where he arguably could be next in line after this Aldo versus Conor fight, beating Cub Swanson back at that UFC fight night card with 4 seconds left, gets the neck crank win. Before that, wins over Penn and Charles Oliveira. Frankie's currently the number 2 ranked fighter in that featherweight weight class. You have Faber, who's moving up. I don't know if this is going to be a permanent thing. You know, his buddy and teammate T.J. Dillashaw is currently the champion at 35, and it doesn't look like he's going to lose that strap anytime soon. So I don't know. As long as Aldo is the champ, I think that hurts Faber's chances of getting a title shot, just because Aldo cut him down and really, really embarrassed him in that last fight at WEC 48. That was that was a beatdown. He had that giant blue bruise on his leg. He tweeted out the next day. I'm taking Frankie here just because he has that iron chin. He has a heart that is, he has more heart than any fighter in the UFC, and I really don't see how you argue that point. The guy just fights with so much will. Faber, though, he's never lost in a non-title fight, but if you believe Vegas, this is where he gets that first non-title fight loss. But it's going to be a hell of a war. Faber's always getting in these really, really fun fights, but you look at his fight with Alex Caceres, and Faber won in the 3rd round, but he had big troubles. Alex kept moving forward and kept sort of pushing him. And if Faber thinks Alex pushed him, Frankie's going to drag him into deep waters. I think 1st and 2nd round, Uriah should want to finish the fight. And if it goes into the 3rd round, the 4th round, the 5th round, that's when we're really going to see Frankie start pulling ahead. And if you're Faber, you don't really want to get into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, because that's when Frankie seems to shine in all of his fights, from wins to losses. And I believe that wraps up UFC Manila. Next week we'll be back breaking down UFC 187. Like I said, go and listen to last week's marathon episode. Even if you gotta break it up into a few days, it was worth the listen. Davey Boy with some hot takes, and that interview with Dada 5000 was very, very fun. Thank you for listening. As always, you can visit us at the MMA Podcast on Twitter, themmmapodcast.com, facebook.com/the MMA Podcast. You guessed it. Our regular co-host, Ramsey's been feeling not too hot at the Aunt Jimmy Show. So shout out to our buddy Ramsey's. I really hope he feels better soon. And selfishly, I hope he's able to come back on the show, because he's the funniest motherfucker around here. Of course, shout out to Ross Finkelstein, the Jew. Even though he couldn't make it, he texted me something in the middle of the show that I haven't read yet, because I can't read and talk at the same time. And I've been talking for almost an hour straight. Of course, the Eagle at Westland Eagle AH will be doing a podcast on the road maybe next week. Maybe we'll do it from the hotel in Vegas. We might do one podcast on the road to Vegas next Wednesday and do another one on the ride back on Sunday. I have no idea. Yao and Chrome, Ahira Shinwu, who else? Bill the Butcher, Kevin Black, giving me mad heat for taking last week off. Don't worry, we are back. Of course, Mystery Mads, who does the music at the end. Follow him on Twitter at Mystery Deja, Mystery Deja. Our boy Don Enrique, who else is out there. We'll shout out. There's honestly too many to mention, but if you listen, if you tweet with us, if you fucks with the MMA Podcast, we love the shit out of you. We hope the love is mutual. And this is going to be a really fun card next week. We'll be breaking down UFC 187, 2 belts on the line, Weidman's belt, Jones' stripped belt. Will DC get it? Will Rumble get it? Plus a lot more fun-ass fights. We have Cerrone McDessie, Brown Arlovsky, Benavidez Moraga, Dodson McCoskey, Kim Berkman. My Jimmies are sufficiently wrestled. What else? I mentioned Dada 5000, BYB Extreme. I can't thank him enough for spending 45 minutes with us, and the dude can cut a hell of a promo. If you heard us talk to him on last week's episode, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And until next week's road trip to Vegas with myself and the Eagle, thanks for listening to the podcast, and we'll see you down the road. We gone.
Shut up, Jake. Tune into the MMA Podcast every Tuesday night.
The wild style, always been a foul child. Relax, sucker, I be the coming like Noah.
The MMA Podcast, Jake is the host. And since Ramsey's been in a wheelchair, the Aunt Jimmy Show has been on a roll. I wanna say John Jones is a host, so I think that I'll pick up the phone and dial 213-457-3380. We got hot takes on the stove. You get blood on your clothes if you're sitting in the front row. I throw on my gi and then I lace the hoops. I'll have Yao lying down cause he ain't the truth. And if Alan wasn't a cop, I'd mention you. And shout out to Ross Finkelstein, the Jew. Cause according to you, you're an MMA guru. Approved Bisbing lost his hands count Dooku. If you're a fancy boy, you get a 2-minute slot. Mystery wants a title shot. So listen to the MMA Podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me T-Ass, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. But you know that I'll never tap. So listen to the MMA Podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me T-Ass, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. And you know that I won't tap. Mystery. The MMA Podcast. Most of us just live and breathe this fighting shit. Shut up, Jake. Shut up, Jake.